and good evening, wherever you are joining us from the world. I'm glad you can join us today for this session on of justice for Africa in ending child labor. I'm Rebecca Tsanangelalulwa, a youth activist and the national leader of 100 Million Namibia. On the 20th of February, student leaders, youth activists, and child labor survivors and their representative organizations across the continent with solidarity actions from around the world demanded that world leaders do not cut their future. They demanded urgent action that delivers justice for Africa, for Africa's children and young people. Today, we have got some of those amazing leaders joining us. In the next hour, we will run around the continent to hear about their transformative work on justice for Africa to end child labor in their countries. Firstly, we will hear from Scholastica Pembe. I hope I did justice to your name. If I didn't, apologies. The national coordinator of the Tanzanian Coalition Against Child Labor. The first-of-a-kind national inclusive coalition consists of 49 organizations whose concerted effort is towards eradicating child labor in Tanzania. Scholastica explained the leading causes of child labor in Tanzania and what the coalition is currently doing to address these injustices. Scholar, for the next 5 minutes, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you very much, Rebecca. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone in the world. As Rebecca said, my name is Scholastica Pembe, National Coordinator from Tanzania Coalition Against Child Labor. Tanzania Coalition Against Child Labor, this is a network. It have more than 49 members in Tanzania, mainland, and Zanzibar. And we are working to promote and protect children's rights, and especially to end child labor, child trafficking, as well as exploitation, slavery, child trafficking in Tanzania. Tanzania is one of the countries that have been affected so much on the issue of child labor worldwide. Currently, I can say it's not just currently, because this is a data from 2016, which Tanzania, 4.2 million children have been affected on child labor issues in Tanzania. And this data is also explains for those children who they are coming from urban areas, but also for those children who they are coming rural areas. And according to the survey, rural areas is an area where children they have been affecting so much than urban areas. And in Tanzania, there are different areas where children they have been working, and those areas, especially in agriculture areas, where there is commercial crops, plantations, etc., is where children they have been working so much in those areas, but also in domestic services. As we know, so many people they need domestic workers, so also they use children under the age of 14 and even 17 years of age. The same times also there are some of the informal sector. Those are informal activities where children also they have been working in those areas, especially begging at the street, washing cars, working in different areas. For example, from cooking presses, etc. Also, we have mining sectors. Also, it's one of the area where children they have been using so much in working. Another area is the issue of commercial sexual exploitation. We have seen here there are so many children who they have been trafficked, especially from villages to town, and being promised to come to work, but at the end of the day that they have been end up on sexual exploitation. Due to those all of the areas, those are some of the areas. There are so many areas which children they have been exploited and abused through child labor in Tanzania. there are so many causes which face the children in Tanzania, especially one, and that is the biggest one, is poverty. As you know, that poverty is one of the issues which can lead even the family to lack basic needs like food, shelter, education, etc. So at the end of the day, it faced children at the family for them to participate in different activities so that they can even fulfill some of their needs at the family level. So poverty is affected number of families, especially from rural areas, where the families sometimes they even take their children with a very minimum age to come to town so that they can search for work, etc. But also there are some people who they also take children, or for example, those who they are disabled children, and came with them to the town, and then they start using them, exploiting them, and begging around the street. Another issue here is all about tradition and customs. Our tradition, there are some areas which there are still bad traditions, I can say, or mila potofu in Swahili, of which they don't see the importance of education at all, since the tradition is when a child is about the age of teenager, it means they take them inside the house, teach them on how they can live with the husband, teach them on how they can be adult. So at the end of the day, those children they stop school, and because they stop school and they are at home, so at the end of the day that they decide to search for work, and that is child labor. They end up on child labor exploitation, and even not even paid with their work that they are performing. Another issue here is lacking of education, and lack of education is in two parts. The first parts, in lack of education, is where children, some of the children, they live very far from schools, especially in villages, and some of them is like maybe even 10 kilometer, 5 kilometer, 2 kilometer, and children there is no car, there is no bicycle, so children they are supposed to walk to go to school, so they drop out from school because they use a lot of journey to go to school. So due to those reasons, those are the causes. But also in Tanzania, Tanzania Coalition Against Child Labor current it have some strategies where we also want to see how can we end up, or how can we address this issue of child labor in Tanzania. And one of the issue that Tanzania Coalition is working on is improve the evidence based, and improving the evidence based is we can see how can we reach the areas where children they work, but also to know the number, how which the number that we have for the children who they are working on child labor in this currently, because the data that we are using is almost 5 or 6 years back, since 2016. But also we are doing social mobilization and advocacy to make sure that working on laws, and making sure that our laws is revised, because there are some penalties in laws
Scholar,
that
thank
are
you so much.
okay. It's okay.
Scholar, thank you so much. That's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for the amazing work that you're doing.
Okay, thank you so much.
Our next, thank you. Our next speaker is based in Jos, Nigeria. Amin, who is an inspiring individual helping former child laborers under the Algeria system in his community. Amin, how do you prioritize leadership of survivors of child labor in your organization? Why is this important? Al-Amin, the floor is yours. Okay, it looks like Al-Amin has had a bit of connection issues. We'll get to him right when he comes back on. Move on to our speaker, who is Francis Awa from Cameroon. Awa Francis Mbuli is the founder of Survivors Network, SN, a Cameroonian-based female survivors-led NGO that fights against all forms of human trafficking. Francisca, how is child labor connected to other child rights abuses in your community?
Thank you so much for that. I'm so elated to be here. And I hope my internet is better. Child labor is something that I always look at. I would say it's the fertilizer to so many child abuses. In Cameroon, for instance, child labor is so rampant. It's so rampant because of poverty, as Kola highlighted, and double with the effect that Cameroon is being struck by a lot of crises. We have the Boko Haram in the north region of Cameroon, and we have the ongoing Anglophone crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. That's the English-speaking regions of Cameroon. Child labor cuts across children's rights, such as health, the right to education, because many children, their future are being cut under situations of farming, situations of mining, street hawkers, nannies, servants in shops. And when that happens, a lot of other rights that children, which we all know are the vulnerable populations below the age of 18 in Cameroon, have all of their rights that they need to enjoy as children being cut off from them. A little bit child labor also to a greater extent causes other child rights abuses like child sexual exploitation and child sex trafficking. In situations where children are being exposed under labor exploitation, other things follow thus. They are being exposed. There are people who use them because of what the society has put them to exploit them. They just know that those children are very, very vulnerable, more than their vulnerability as children naturally. They are vulnerable doubled because they are being set in those situations because of poverty, what the society has bestowed on them. In Cameroon, for instance, in 2021, our government made moderate advancements in effort to eliminate the worst forms of child labor. The government launched the Zero Children in Gold Mines program to address child labor in the gold mining sector, which is super rampant. The government also convened meetings at the level of the Technical Secretariat for the Interministerial Committee on Trafficking in Persons. Notwithstanding, it was adopted an operational action plan to combat trafficking in persons and smuggling of migrants was adopted, and so much emphasis was put on child labor, but this was, however, on papers, we all know. Also, child labor, at this extent, the legal framing is so slow. They are not even found, much is not even said on papers when it comes to child labor in Cameroon. And this is also, to an extent, with the crisis, many children are being used by the non-state armed groups as child soldiers. And there is nothing that is being said. See, saying this to the open somehow is not really secure on me, but I will say it. There is nothing really put on papers concerning prohibition of use of children as soldiers, because what is even happening in the country is not being said. It's very much underspoken. So a lot needs to be done, and we as Survivors Network, we are doing our best thanks to our 1 million campaign. We are struggling to put our hands together to see the little best we can do, educating people in our community on how to put their children in schools, because we all know that education is the key. And if we put more emphasis on children leaving farms, gold mines, houses to take care of their younger ones or children of relatives and go to school, I think this is one of the lead way that we are using in Cameroon to redress the situation of child labor or child labor exploitation. That's the little piece I got for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Siska. Thank you so much. Next, we are going to have Al Almin from um, Al Amin is from Jos, Nigeria, who is an inspiring individual helping former child laborers under the Al Majuri system in his community. Al Almin, how do you prioritize the leadership of survivors of child labor in your organization, and why is this important? Okay, unfortunately, we have lost Al Almin. I hope his connection gets better so that he gets to join us and share his incredible work. Our next speaker is Wani Francis. Wani is the executive director of Street Beats Southern Sudan. A former child soldier, Wani uses music to amplify the message of child rights. Wani, what changes are needed to ensure every child is learning in school and not working to survive? Wani, welcome.
Okay, thank you. Are you hearing me? Thank you, the director of Tribute Foundation in South Sudan. Based on most, according to our survey, most of our children are suffering child labor activities due to the fight, and the most common thing that being engaged into. All along this was the independent system of South Sudan has not been so stable. Children have been up and down, in, maybe doing school in few months and get disturbed. So to me, the objective and on at least basic tips for action against labor, prevent the engagement of children in worst, which is to be even like in South Sudan, most of the children now work as vendors, taxi, for education, and that means they have the education system, no rules and embarked to the one objective is to remove the worst cause of high level. The third one for the rehabilitation and social integration of such children affected by um I think the only way awareness and like public opinion forward, and that's really put this, and people have to be given chance to tell, to ask, main, like to raise awareness against these issues can really, and then the government also has most of the children, most of the laws embarked on children are forward. There's supposed to be enforcement of ever in children against labor, and it has implemented without this. I also put forward education of the education system has to be put forward because in South Sudan, the Ministry of Education, the education system whereby children they have the right to grow, because there is no proper curriculums, school curriculums, things like regular attendance list, things like putting children to look at education as the main focus. People just go to school, the teachers needs to be paid, and everybody who is supposed to serve as a civil servant in the education department need to also focus on the future of the children in the next coming years. I don't see this serious like in South Sudan, and this is something that needs to be addressed. Yes. I look at this thing, and then we focus building a way of recruiting soldiers in our government, and even let me say Africa wide, even the whole world, because most of the 70% of the children in South Sudan are soldiers. So how to bring them out of that needs also another strategy in order for the government to understand and then for the people to understand, because most of the children are now in the hands of rebels, and how to bring them back becomes another big problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Wani, for that insightful engagement from Sudan. Next, we are going to be joined by Francis Foley. Francis is the founder of the Youth Coalition in the Consolidation of Democracy YCD, based in Chalo, Malawi, working with the children, youth, and women in the areas of child development, youth and women, the areas of protection, SRHR, gender and inclusive women and youth participation representation. Francis, building on the concerns of child rights abuses, to what extent do modern injustices, including the unfair tax system, exacerbate these inequalities against children? Francis?
Thank you, Rebecca. Nice meeting you again, and greetings to all. Looking at the modern injustices, especially the unfair global tax system, how this has put much inequalities against children in Africa. I think if you consider how the tax system globally is quite very, very unfair. For instance, you will find like bigger companies paying tax on the same level with the smaller companies. And then at the end of the day, what is discovered is if the taxes are quite very high, that would also suggest going up of the prices. And then if the prices have gone up, at the end of the day, who suffers is this local country. In Malawi is this poor country. In Burundi is this poor country. In Rwanda. And then for the poor countries to put up with high taxes, and for the poor families to put up with high taxes, it becomes a very big challenge because prices have gone up. And then, for example, if prices have gone up and the family has like maybe 5 children, at the end of the day, what the family will suggest is, would say maybe let us just only have Francis in school and have Labega and the others all out of school. And then at the end of the day, you see that so many children go out of school simply because the global task system is quite very unfair and it's very high on the part of countries or on the part of the economies that are already struggling. And you also look at the issue of child labor. When the prices go up, most of the companies would go for cheap labor because they don't want to pay more. And then who happens to be the first victim is this child who doesn't have any economic muscle. Companies go for children simply because they want cheap labor and they cannot pay for like highly qualified, highly competent people simply because taxes have gone up. At the end of the day, it's these children that they abuse for cheap labor simply because taxes have gone up. And then you also consider like families in the villages, because the taxes have gone up. It's high for them if they were like, for example, having an income of $10 a day, paying a tax of $1. That means they will remain with $9. Now taxes have gone up, they are paying $3 a day. What does that mean? That only means to say this family is now gaining less per day. The surplus that was already very little is becoming too little. So if the families cannot even like get more from their businesses, what happens? All the results are put on the children. Children cannot even be fed. Children cannot even be sent to school. Instead, they end up in the streets begging. Instead, they end up in the streets being forced into child labors. And then over the same, how the issue of the global pandemics have like increased the cases of inequalities against children in Africa. You will discover to say, for example, when the COVID-19 pandemic emerged, most of African countries were already struggling with their economies. They couldn't put up with the demands to buy things like personal protective equipment, to buy things like the vaccines. So instead, they overstretched even their already struggling economies just to buy the much needed vaccine, just to buy the much needed personal protective equipment. Because of that, there are other sectors that were already suffering within their countries. So they had to divide their resources instead of putting them towards, or instead of channeling them towards, like, say, one development agenda, they would divide the resources into different agendas simply because of the pandemic. And then Africa as whole had too little to put up with the pandemic. We needed much support from our development partners, but nevertheless, nothing happened as Africa had expected to have. So this is how I would put it. This is what I would say, that both the global pandemics and the unfair tax system has greatly affected the inequalities in Africa, more especially to do with children in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francis, for that insightful work explanation from Malawi. I am now delighted to introduce Amable Iradukunda from Burundi, a committed student leader serving as the Executive Secretary of the Burundi National Students Union. He is uniting different actors from across the board to protect the rights of children and young people in Burundi. Amable, why clarity, like seeing injustice for Africa, important in fighting for the rights of education, for the right to education? Francis?
Thank you, Rebecca. So, for this question, I have to say some 3 points to respond on it. Why solidarity is important in fighting for the right of education. So, as you know, normally solidarity network, it's work for just to improve on some point or some strategic point. So normally solidarity in its way, without going through the solidarity or fighting of the right of education. First of all, solidarity, if 2 or 4, 7 or 10 or more than 10 organizations work together, that will help just to reduce on the numbers of how many people of this organization can work on this project. So because once you have an activity, other organization have like 2 or 4 or 6 activity. So you will have just to have around to restructure your number on specific duties. So that will have just to increase the number and to reduce the number of one organization. So it will help even to in a values approach, to use values approach in a campaign like we did for in Burundi. So like anyone have or any other organization have to work on his program and with his strategies under the responsibility of the national lead. So, and that will help just to raise awareness and the impact of the campaign. And the other point that can help is on the area. One organization cannot work around all the country, so it's not possible. We have some specific area in which we work. So if we work in synergy and within solidarity of 2 or 7 organizations, that will help a lot. So that will even help to reduce on the resource. As you know now, many organizations will give funds of on some project or program or campaign or some activity, specific activity. That's why now they privilege the people who have only these people who have just the consortium organization because they believe in the clarity of the funds or declaration how the finance when you are together than if you are the only person. So if I come back on what you said about in a solidarity in fighting for the education right. So as an example, in Burundi, you have worked within 7 or on the list we were 12, but those who are more practical are around 7. So each one have to work on his program and under the responsibility and under the concept of our right for justice. We have got some ideas from survey on a secondary school when children were saying we don't have the same rights or the same chance or opportunities on the system of education in the country. Some are poor and some are rich. So that gap just that have the result on the system and the result on the note of the students. So within our solidarity, there is an organization like a TSBM who work on helping on the side of humanitarian, and they will help young people and some victim people and students and children to give just them the chance just to see their area is not different as in a town or something because they are building centers in a rural area, and then they give just to implement like a library programs on the center restaurants, so that students can come and to eat at the center. So this help just young people, just children, just to know that they are people who just are caring about of them. They are those people who are just leaving the city, coming to them because
Last line,
they
amiable.
understand that it's the same. So solidarity we have on those all areas, and it's clear for us just to to tag the organization who have the specific program on which we can count on our campaign. So in short, is that I can just say and thank you.
Thank you so much, Amable. Our next speaker who's finally here is none other than Al-Amin, who is based in Jos, Nigeria. Al-Amin is an inspiring individual helping former child laborers under the Al-Majiri system in his community. Al-Amin, please tell us, how do you prioritize the leadership of survivors of child labor in your organization, and why is this important?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alamin Gamandi, and I am the founder of the Prime Goals Initiative and national lead for 100 million Nigeria. Well, we actually prioritize the leadership of survivors through empowerment and representation. You see, the leadership of survivors of child labor helps empower individuals who have first-hand experiences and knowledge of the challenges and issues faced by child laborers. It, it also provides an opportunity for their voices to be heard and their perspectives to shape policies, programs, and strategies. By including survivors in leadership positions, our organization can ensure that the decisions are informed by their unique insights and experiences. And you see, sometimes we are also considering expertise and credibility, where survivors of child labor possesses, valuable expertise and credibility in combating child labor. They have an in-depth understanding of systematic issues, vulnerabilities, and risks associated with child labor, which can perform effective strategies and interventions. Their lived experience can enhance the credibility and authenticity of our organization efforts and to combat child labor. And sometimes we are also looking at the mentorship and the inspiration side of the leadership. You see, survival leaders can serve as powerful role models and mentors for other survivors. Their leadership positions can inspire and motivate other survivors to overcome their past experiences and strive for personal growth and development. By fostering a supportive environment, our organization can create opportunities for survivors leaders, just like we did for Aminu, who is a survivor, who is a survivor we are working with. We were able, with the help and the support from 100 million campaign, we were able to go to the ECOWAS and address over 70 parliamentarians, where we discuss critical issues befalling the child labor area. Because doing this is these opportunities, we consider these opportunities because they have a contextual knowledge and sensitivities. where they can bring a deep understanding of the cultural, social, and economic context in which child labor occurs. This knowledge is essential for designing contextually appropriate interventions that address the root causes of child labor effectively. By prioritizing survival leadership, our organization can ensure that our initiatives are sensitive, relevant, and sustainable. And by promoting survival leadership, not even our organizations, but many other organizations who are involved in, supporting child labors can challenge the stigmas and the prejudice associated with child labor survivors. Survival leaders can advocate for the rights of child labor survivors, raise awareness about the long-term effects of child labor, and work towards creating inclusive and supportive environments for survivors to thrive. It is also important to note that while survival leadership is valuable, it should be supported by comprehensive efforts that address the underlying causes of child labor, promote education, advocate for policy changes, and engage relevant stakeholders in the fight against child labor. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Al, for joining us. Thank you to our inspiring speakers and all of you for joining us today. This continues on our core Justice for Africa, building upon the actions that the different student activists, leaders, child advocates have taken around and across the continent of Africa. We are pleased to have had this session today, and thank you so much for joining us. Please do continue the conversation of hashtag Justice for Africa. My name is Rebecca Tenang Lalula, and I am the National Lead of 100 Million Namibia. Have a good day.